The FBI has released a video of the suspected shooter in the killing of right-wing influencer Charlie Kirk at Utah Valley University. The new video shows the suspected shooter fleeing the scene, a figure that was dressed in black. He was seen running across the roof to a corner of the building. The suspect then climbs over the edge and drops to the grass beneath, before walking to a nearby road and crossing it to enter a wooded area. Authorities say the suspect was wearing sunglasses, Converse shoes and a distinctive black t-shirt with an American flag and an eagle. A reward of up to $100,000 has been announced for the capture of the suspect. Poland has closed its border with Belarus ahead of the joint Russian-Belarusian military exercises, which are scheduled to take place from September 12th to 16th. Poland closed its border at midnight into Friday amid the fallout from Russia's drone incursion earlier this week. Poland said that some of the drones that entered its airspace on Wednesday came from Belarus, where Russian and Belarusian troops have been gathering ahead of the exercises. The drills have also raised security concerns in neighboring NATO member states, including Poland, Lithuania and Latvia. Belarus has released 52 political prisoners in a deal that was brokered by the United States, which has led to the easing of some sanctions on the country's national airline, Belarus. The airline was sanctioned by the European Union, the United States and others after Belarusian flight controllers ordered a commercial jet traveling from Greece to Lithuania to land in Minsk. Once the plane landed, authorities arrested Roman Patarsevich, the dissident journalist who was on board. The latest development signals a potential thaw in relations between Washington and Minsk, despite Belarus being a close ally of Russia. Brazil's Supreme Court has sentenced ex-president Jair Bolsonaro to 27 years and 3 months in prison for plotting a coup at the end of the landmark trial that divided the nation and drew U.S. fury. Bolsonaro, who has denied any wrongdoing, is currently under house arrest in Brasilia. Bolsonaro's defense lawyers said that they will appeal the verdict. Four of the 5 justices reviewing the case in the panel found the far-right politician guilty on 5 counts, making Bolsonaro a first former Brazilian president to be convicted of attempting a coup. Senator Flávio Bolsonaro, son of the former Brazilian president, denounced his father's persecution. He called for the parliament to unite and grant unrestricted amnesty following the former leader's conviction. Many Brazilians celebrated the conviction of former President Jair Bolsonaro. Rio de Janeiro residents from the Santa Teresa neighborhood took to the streets in a musical celebration following the conviction of the former Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro. Foreign ministers of Austria, the Czech Republic, Slovenia, Hungary and Slovakia met in the Central 5 format to discuss key issues, including the ongoing war in Ukraine, West Asia tensions, European Union enlargement and measures to combat illegal migration. Czech Foreign Minister Jan Lipavsky condemned Russia's drone incursion into Poland, emphasizing the need for NATO to strengthen its defense capabilities and unity, especially on its eastern flank. Qatar's Prime Minister Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdul Rahman Al Thani told the UN Security Council that Israel was derailing efforts to end the Gaza war by attacking Hamas leaders in Doha. Pledging to continue mediation, the Qatari Prime Minister accused Israeli leaders of showing disregard for the lives of hostages held by Hamas in Gaza. The UN Security Council issued a joint statement expressing deep concern and emphasizing the need for de-escalation without mentioning Israel by name. The statement also acknowledged Qatar's vital role in mediating peace efforts. Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif met with Qatar's Emir Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, calling for Muslim countries to unite against Israeli aggression following the recent attacks on Doha. Sharif expressed solidarity with Qatar, condemning the Israeli strikes as a blatant violation of international law and Qatar's sovereignty. He appreciated Qatar's efforts to bring peace in Gaza, emphasizing that Israeli actions aim to undermine regional stability. On day 707 of the Israel-Hamas conflict, protesters created a large display of Trump and Netanyahu on a beach opposite the U.S. Embassy in Tel Aviv. Protesters wore a message on the beach, Nobel War, to highlight the hostage situation and the ongoing crisis. They have sought intervention of Trump to secure the release of hostages. The Palestinian death toll in the Gaza Strip has risen to more than 64,700, with around 163,800 others who are injured since the conflict between Hamas and Israel began on October 7, 2023. In the past 24 hours, 72 deaths and 356 injuries have been reported due to Israeli attacks. Additionally, 7 people, including a child, have died from malnutrition and starvation in the besieged enclave over the past 24 hours. The United Nations has suspended aid to Afghans returning from neighboring countries due to the Taliban ban on female staff working with the organization. The UN said that its women employees had been prevented from accessing their workplaces in several locations across the country this week. Now, this decision has affected over 2.1 million Afghans who have returned from Pakistan and Iran so far this year. The UN relies on female employees to interview women returnees for cultural reasons, making it impossible to continue operations without them.
उनके भी शॉर्ट है कोई
The death toll from the violent protests in Nepal has risen to 51, according to the Nepal police. The protests led by Gen Z were against corruption and government accountability, with protesters demanding an end to institutionalized corruption and favoritism in governance. According to the police, more than 12,500 prisoners who escaped from multiple jails across the country remain on the run. US President Donald Trump's nominee for ambassador to India, Sergio Gore, told the Senate Foreign Relations Committee that US and India are not far apart on a trade deal. He said that Trump has invited an Indian delegation to Washington next week for talks, pledging to strengthen ties. Sergio Gore has called India a strategic partner and cornerstone of regional stability. Former Maharashtra Governor C.P. Radhakrishnan has been sworn in as the 15th Vice President of India. The oath of office was administered by President Draupadi Murmu at the Rashtrapati Bhavan in the presence of Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi and other senior leaders of the NDA. Radhakrishnan was elected on Tuesday, securing 452 votes against opposition candidate and former Supreme Court Judge B. Sudarshan Reddy, who received 300 votes. Asian markets surged Friday following Wall Street's record highs as expectations of multiple US interest rate cuts boosted global investor sentiment. Japan, South Korea and Taiwan hit record levels driven by AI optimism, lower bond yields. The US CPI report was slightly firm but not alarming, reinforcing bets on a Fed rate cut next week, with analysts expecting cuts to continue through 2025. Treasury yields dropped, easing pressure on global bonds market. Meanwhile, European shares opened higher while the ECB held rates steady, signaling it's in a good place but may cut again in December if needed. The US dollar remained under pressure Friday as rising jobless claims and modest inflation fueled expectations of a Federal Reserve rate cut next week. The dollar index fell, the pace for a second straight weekly decline. Investors now see a 25 basis point cut is certain, though expectations for a larger 50-point cut have least. Treasury yields hovered just above 4%, while mixed economic data created uncertainty in the market. The yen held steady after a US-Japan currency statement, while the euro dipped slightly as ECB officials signaled confidence in the economic outlook and held rates steady. Oil prices edged lower Friday, extending losses from the previous session amid concerns over weakening US demand and rising global supply. Brent and US crude oil both dropped around 0.5% after the IEA projected stronger than expected supply growth from the OPEC Plus this year. OPEC, however, kept its demand outlook steady. Saudi exports to China are set to rise sharply in October, raising questions about China's capacity to absorb the extra supply. Meanwhile, Russia's oil reserves have dropped and US crude inventories rose by 3.9 million barrels. Expectations of a Fed rate cut next week may support future oil demand. Gold prices rose on Friday and are on track for a fourth straight weekly gain, driven by fears of a weakening US labor market and expectations of multiple Federal Reserve rate cuts. Spot gold rose 0.4% to $3,647, while US gold futures hit $3,686 despite higher consumer inflation in August. Falling producer prices and rising jobless claims point to economic softness. The Fed is expected to cut rates by 25 basis points next week. Gold, which benefits from lower interest rates, has surged 39% this year and may soon test $3,900. Silver, platinum and palladium also posted weekly gains. Global electric vehicle sales grew 15% in August, the slowest pace since January, according to research firm Motion. China's EV sales rose just 6%, down sharply from earlier in the year, though a rebound is expected in the fourth quarter with new subsidies. Worldwide, about 1.7 million EVs were sold, with Europe growing 48%, North America 13%, and other regions 56%. China's biggest EV maker, BYD, lowered its 2025 global sales target by 16%, reflecting weaker domestic demand, which has contributed to the overall slowdown in EV growth. Mercedes-Benz has achieved a milestone in solid-state battery technology with its EQS test vehicle. The car covered 749 miles on a single charge during a trip from Stuttgart, Germany to Malmö, Sweden. The journey was planned using electric intelligence software, which factored in terrain, traffic, temperature and energy needs. The EQS was fitted with lithium metal solid-state cells from US-based Factorial Energy, optimized by Mercedes-AMG high-performance powertrain. The battery, similar in weight and size to current EQS packs, offered 25% more energy and relied on passive airflow cooling. Microsoft plans to expand its infrastructure to train its own artificial intelligence models to compete with OpenAI, Anthropic, and others. The company will make significant investments in its own clusters of computing power to train models. Microsoft will continue its partnership with OpenAI while also working with other model makers and developing its own. The company recently released its first large language model trained on 15,000 NVIDIA H100 chips, smaller than clusters used by Meta, Google, and xAI. The U.S. Justice Department has filed a lawsuit against Uber in federal court in California's Northern District. The U.S. District Department is accused of violating federal law by discriminating against people with physical disabilities. The DOJ alleged that Uber and its drivers routinely refuse service to people with disabilities, including riders with service animals or stowable wheelchairs, and charge extra fees such as cancellation costs when the service is denied. Tesla has ended speculations about introducing wireless inductive charging, despite earlier hints suggesting development was underway. Now, rumors began in 2023 when Tesla fans spotted images of a charging plate during an investor presentation. And chief designer Franz von Holzhausen has suggested that the company was exploring the technology. However, Tesla lead engineer Wes Morrill stated that nothing is planned, calling wireless charging for the Cybertruck impractical due to its ground clearance. Ireland has announced that it will not participate in the 2026 Eurovision Song Contest if Israel is a participant. The decision comes amidst a growing political divide over the competition, with Slovenia's broadcaster and Spain's culture minister also indicating that they would not take part if Israel competes. The European Broadcasting Union has pushed to back the deadline for broadcasters to confirm their participation to December.